Now let's take a broader look at the midterm picture in California. Anthony Salvanto is here. He's our CBS News Director of Elections and Surveys. All right, so Anthony, why should Americans outside of California care about the 2018 races in that state?
Well, for everybody in the nation watching the midterms, it's hard to overstate how important California is going to end up being, because we know Democrats will need 24 House seats to flip to have a chance to take back the House, right? But if you look at California and the number of races, districts that we see out there now that could be competitive, there could be as many as 8. That's a large number compared to other states. And it's also a state, of course, that we don't normally think of as a battleground state,
no,
right?
Never at all.
Exactly. I mean, it's a reliably blue state in presidential years. So while we're all running around Ohio and Florida, et cetera, California kind of gets ignored, but it's definitely going to be in focus this year, and especially a lot of areas around Southern California, where even from here we can see a lot of hot races shaping up.
So what larger national themes are playing out in the competitive California races?
Well, you look at the kind of districts and the kinds of voters in those districts that we think Democrats would have to win to have a chance, right? The places I pick out already are places that have a slightly higher than average median income. A lot of these competitive districts do. And we'll watch things like the tax bill. Do Republican voters think, okay, this is good, our taxes got cut? Or does the fact that property taxes can't be written off as much, does that affect them and make them sour on it and give the Democrats an opening? That could be particularly the case, we'll watch, in places that have higher housing values, like in Southern California. Then the other thing, of course, is the Latino vote. These districts have a slightly higher percentage of Latinos, Hispanic voters in them than the national average. So there again, here's part of the Democratic base, right? They won 7 in 10 Hispanic voters in California last year in the presidential cycle. They would need to motivate and turn out those kind of voters again. So these districts will be a test to see if they can do that as well.
So you mentioned at the outset the fact that we never think of California as sort of a battleground state, that it is reliably blue. And California is known around the country as sort of the place where liberal policymaking lives. For instance, Governor Jerry Brown vowed to keep his state in compliance with the Paris Climate Accord. Then at the other end of the political spectrum, you have critics like Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who famously warned against his state being, quote, Californiaized. So what role could that kind of dynamic have here heading into the 2018 midterms?
Yeah, I think this will be really interesting to watch. When you look at some of these policies, you mentioned a couple. I've seen polls showing offshore oil drilling, which is not popular in California. And that's, of course, policy changes that have come out of the White House. If you look also at, of course, climate change, there's a lot of folks in California concerned about that, looking to make policy there. And then you look at the president's approval rating in California, which has been low in all the polling that's been out there. And candidates for Congress might end up getting tied to the president. That's often what happens in midterms. So all of those factors will be in play. And then around the country, as folks watch that, you might get that argument of what you see in California. Will that be something that the Democrats would do if they were in charge? If they took back the House? So that could play. We'll see how that plays across the rest of the country, for better or for worse, if the focus is really all out there.
All right, a lot to watch. Anthony Salvanto. Thanks so much, Anthony.
Thanks, Elaine.